Welcome to Bookworm, the home where stories from the pens of South African writers come to life. Here, you'll discover captivating Afrikaans novels, Afrikaans short stories, and English tales to enjoy while doing your daily chores or simply relaxing. Thank you for visiting us. Please give us a like and subscribe so we can continue sharing more stories and help our channel grow. We welcome your comments, positive or negative, as every bit of feedback helps us improve. All copyrights belong to the respective writers. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the story.
The Alpha Who Didn't Recognize Me, written by Katinka. Chapter 1. I spelled him before I saw him. A crisp pine and smoke scent that hit my senses like lightning. My knees buckled. My lungs forgot how to breathe. Mate. I turn, heart pounding in my throat. He stood just across the hallway, tall, broad-shouldered, black hair swept back like a storm. The pull was immediate. Bone deep, soul deep, Kael cross. His eyes scanned the crowd lazily. Then they landed on me. My breath caught. But he didn't stop. He looked at me, straight through me, and walked past like I was just another wallflower. No recognition. No connection. Nothing. My wolf howled inside me, clawing at the sudden void. "Mate," she cried again. But he didn't hear. I clenched my jaw, blinking away the sting in my eyes. Maybe he didn't know yet. Maybe he hadn't shifted. Or maybe I wasn't what he expected. My guests don't get fairy tale endings. Not with alphas like him. I stood frozen in that hallway, surrounded by people but completely alone. He didn't see me. He didn't feel it. But I did, and it was already too late. The bond had formed, and it would destroy me. By lunch, the whole school knew Kael was back. Golden boy. Future alpha. Dangerous. Beautiful. Untouchable. I kept my head down. I wasn't planning on speaking to him. Hell, I wasn't planning on breathing near him. But the bond had other ideas. I could feel him, even with 2 floors between us. His heartbeat like a distant drum, steady, strong, and completely unaware of mine. I caught glimpses of him that week, laughing with his friends, shoving his hands through his hair when he was annoyed, flashing that easy, devastating smile at girls who weren't me. He didn't even flinch when I passed him in the hallway. Didn't glance. Didn't blink. Maybe I was cursed. Maybe I wasn't worthy. My wolf whimpered every time he brushed past without a second thought. "Stop," I whispered inside. "He doesn't know. He doesn't see you." But she did, and she wanted him anyway. I went home with shaking hands and a silent scream in my chest. How do you love someone who doesn't even know they belong to you? It happened Friday afternoon. I was in the back hallway, by the lockers nobody used anymore. Hiding, breathing, trying to forget his scent that clung to my skin like smoke. Then, footsteps. I froze. Kael. Alone. He rounded the corner, muttering into his phone, and stopped short when he saw me. Just for a second, his eyes locked onto mine. I felt the jolt again, like lightning in my blood. But then,
"Move,"
he said flatly. My lips parted, but no words came out. He brushed past, and our arms touched. That's when it happened. His whole body went rigid. His hand caught the locker for balance.
"What the?"
He whispered. Our bond had sparked. Finally. But instead of recognition, he turned, and he growled.
"Stay away from me."
Then he was gone. I slid down the wall, numb. He had felt it, and he still chose rejection. I didn't go to school Monday. I couldn't. Not after the way his voice cracked like a whip. My wolf whimpered for hours, restless, confused. He felt it, I whispered. You know he felt it. She didn't answer. She just paced inside me, growling low. Rejection after recognition is rare. Cruel. Against everything we're taught. But it happens. Omegas don't get choices. Not in this world. That night, I dreamed of him. His hand reaching out. His eyes full of rage. And mine, full of longing. I woke with the taste of his scent in my lungs. And the ache hadn't faded. Tuesday, I went back. Not because I was ready, but because staying away made me feel weaker than facing him ever could. The second I stepped through the doors, whispers followed me. She was staring at Kael again. Did you hear? She touched him. Omegas. So desperate. My shoulders tensed, but I kept walking. Then,
Lila.
I turned. A girl from his circle. Perfect hair. Perfect teeth. Perfect venom.
Stay away from him.
She said, all honey and threat.
Kael doesn't need strays following him around.
I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. Instead, I said nothing. Because what could I say? He was mine. But he didn't want me. That evening, I went for a run. Not a jog. A shift. My wolf needed out. She needed to feel the earth again, to lose herself in something real. Trees blurred around us. Wind tore through our fur. The moon blinked silver above. And then, a scent. Him. Kael was near. I slowed. My wolf growled. She wanted to approach. I didn't. We paused on a ridge, hidden by the brush. There he was. In his wolf form. Alone. Breathing hard. His ears flicked toward us. His head turned. For a moment, just a moment, our eyes met across the trees. And something passed between us. Not words. Not understanding. Just silence. Then he turned and vanished into the dark. No chase. No fight. Just silence. But silence can be louder than a scream. Kael didn't speak to me again. But something had shifted. In class, I'd catch him glancing at me. Fast, sharp, like he hated himself for it. Once, I felt his eyes on me for a full minute. My heart was pounding so loud, I couldn't hear the teacher. I looked up. Our eyes met, and he looked away first. The crack had formed. My wolf stirred, hopeful, but I wasn't sure I had hope left to give. That Friday, at the bonfire, someone dared me to speak to him. Come on, Lila, someone laughed. You keep looking. Might as well go beg for a dance. The pack kids howled like it was funny. Kael was across the fire, leaning against a tree, arms crossed. Watching. Not laughing. Not smiling. I stood. Walked toward him like my feet were moving without me. The music thumped around us, but I only heard my own breath. He didn't move. I stopped in front of him. You felt it, I said. That day by the lockers. You felt it. His jaw tightened.
Doesn't matter.
Why not? His eyes burned into mine.
Because I don't want you.
Then he turned and walked into the woods. And for the first time, I didn't follow. I stayed by the fire, frozen. The smoke bit at my eyes, but I didn't blink. His words echoed over and over. I don't want you. My wolf whimpered. But I didn't cry. Not this time. I stood, straightened my shoulders, and walked into the crowd. Someone offered me a drink. Someone else pulled me into a spin around the fire. And for the first time since the bond sparked, I smiled. Just a little. Just enough. If Kael wanted a ghost, I'd make sure he saw what he missed. Chapter 2. Something had shifted since the bonfire. Not in him. In me, I didn't cry. I didn't chase. But I burned. Every time Kael looked at me now, it was different. His gaze didn't pass over me like I was nothing. It stuck, like smoke under skin. And sometimes, when I turned around, he was already watching. Not angry. Not curious. Something worse. Guilty. I saw him in the library. Alone. I walked past the shelf, and there he was, standing with a book in hand, pretending to read. He stiffened. I didn't speak. I didn't slow down. But our shoulders brushed. It was like lightning in the bloodstream. My knees almost buckled. I heard his breath catch. He dropped the book. I kept walking. Let him feel it this time. Let him burn. That night, I stood at my window, moonlight washing over my skin. I could feel him. His heartbeat, jagged now, like it wasn't sure what rhythm to follow. My wolf paced inside me. She didn't understand this version of the bond. Not pure, not claimed, but burning, uncontrolled. Like we'd been marked with fire, and neither of us knew who lit the match. Was this what rejection felt like when the bond didn't break? A slow scorch that never ended. The next time I saw him, we were in the training ring. Hack drills. Hand to hand. He was partnered with someone else. I wasn't watching him. I swear. But then I felt it. That pull. My eyes lifted, and his were already on me. Not cold. Not cruel. Just tired. Like he'd been carrying something heavy since the day we touched. And maybe. So had I. After class, he brushed past me in the hallway again. Like always. But this time, he flinched. Just the slightest movement, like my presence was a spark against raw skin. His hands clenched. He didn't speak, didn't stop. But I saw the way his jaw tightened. The way his eyes didn't quite meet mine. That's when I knew. He wasn't untouched by this. He was just good at pretending. I dreamed of him again. But this time, it wasn't soft. Flames danced in the woods. Trees cracked. He stood in the center, shirtless, his chest rising with each breath like he'd been running forever. "Why are you here?" I asked.
Because you won't leave me alone.
"You felt it." His voice dropped.
I feel it every time you breathe.
I woke up shaking. My pillow was damp, and my window was wide open, the scent of pine and smoke curling through like a whisper. I found a note in my locker. No name, just 5 words, scrawled in harsh ink, "Stay away from the Alpha." I looked around, but no one watched me. Still, I felt the heat behind my neck. "She knows," my wolf growled. "They all do." The bond wasn't invisible anymore. It was wildfire. And wildfire gets noticed. I confronted him after class. Someone left me a warning. Kael didn't flinch. He leaned against the wall like he didn't care.
I never claimed you.
I felt that. Like claws across my ribs. "No," I said. "But you felt me." His eyes darkened. For a second I saw it, the burn beneath the surface. Then he walked away. Again. That night, I didn't cry. I screamed into my pillow, into the stars. My wolf tore through the woods, howling like her soul was splitting. Why would the moon do this? Why give me something I can't keep? When I shifted back, I lay in the cold grass, shaking. I felt the bond like a chain, like a heat in my chest I couldn't silence. And still, I missed him. Even now, I wanted him. Even now, even after everything. And that was the worst burn of all. Chapter 3. I stopped waiting for him. I stopped hoping. At least. That's what I told myself. But every time he walked into a room, my body betrayed me. My breath caught. My skin tingled. My wolf stirred. And I hated it. Because I knew he wasn't fighting the bond. He was losing to it. Slowly, quietly, like a man standing on the edge of a cliff and not sure if he wants to fall or jump. He watched me in class now. Not obviously, but I felt it. The heat, the pull. And when I looked up, sometimes our eyes would meet just for a second, long enough to make the air between us feel electric. But he always looked away first. And every time he did, I broke a little more. Because if you feel it, and you still turn away, what does that make me? After school, I found him in the parking lot. Not alone this time. His beta stood nearby, talking, laughing. But when I stepped out, the laughter died. Kael's eyes found mine. Something shifted. He said something quick, and the beta walked off.
You following me now?
He asked. I didn't know you'd be here.
But you didn't turn back when you saw me.
His tone wasn't cruel. Just tired. I stepped closer. You can't keep ignoring me, Kael. He looked away.
Don't.
Why not?
Because if you keep reminding me, I won't be able to keep walking away.
I stood there frozen. And this time, I was the one who walked. I changed everything, my rope, my seat. Even the rhythm of my breath, like shrinking might make the bond disappear. I thought it was working, until I saw him. Kael stood by the library steps. The wind caught the edge of his jacket. He was talking to someone, but his eyes. They searched. Not directly. Not obviously. But his glance flicked toward where I used to walk. Then dropped. Then flicked again. He didn't know I was watching. But I saw it. A break in his calm. A flicker of something he didn't want to name. He was losing the fight. Not in fire or fury, but in small, quiet crumblings. And me? I didn't feel powerful. I felt real. He's not sleeping. I wasn't supposed to hear that. I was on my way to camp when I passed two of his pack members in the stairwell. Yeah, one said. You can tell he's snappy as hell. Worse than before? Worse. Their voices dropped as I got closer, so I walked faster. But the words had already stuck. He's not sleeping. And I knew why. That night, I watched the moon rise over the trees behind our house. I stood with the window cracked just enough to feel the air shift. And I felt him, like heat on the back of my neck. No sight, no sound, just pressure, and I knew he was fighting it. Not me, not the bond. Himself, whatever haunted him. It was louder than fate. The school hall had never looked this alive. Soft lights shimmered above a crowd that didn't feel like high school kids anymore. Glitter caught in curls and cuffs. The music pulsed low and dreamy, like it belonged in a different world. I stood near the edge of it all, not part of the circle, not outside of it either. My dress clung to my spine with every nervous shift. And then I saw him. Kael stood on the far side of the room in a black suit, collar slightly open, like he didn't care enough to button up. He wasn't with anyone, but he was never alone. Eyes followed him like shadows. Ours met across the crowd, and for a few heartbeats, everything slowed. He didn't look away. The pull hit fast, that invisible bond that always lit up in his presence. Like the music itself shifted key just to acknowledge him. But he stayed still. And so did I. Someone I barely knew asked if I wanted to dance. I said yes because I didn't want to explain why not. He twirled me, talked, laughed. I smiled. But I never stopped watching Kael. He hadn't moved. And when I laughed at the wrong part of the joke, Kael's jaw flexed. Not enough for anyone else to notice, but I did. Then he turned and walked away. Monday felt quieter. Not just at school, everywhere. Like something had shifted between Friday night and now. I didn't see him in the halls. Not at lunch. Not in the usual places. I tried not to notice, but my bond won't let me. In class, I caught myself staring at the back of his empty seat. The wood still had the curve of his spine in it. The scent of his cologne had faded, but it was there if I imagined hard enough. He was missing. Not absent. Missing. Like something in him had gone quiet, and he needed to get far enough away from me to hear it again. I overheard a few whispers in the library. He left early again, drove out to the cliffs. Alone? The last word sat in my chest all afternoon. That night, I stood on the edge of my porch with a blanket over my shoulders, staring at the moon, and I whispered something I wasn't brave enough to say out loud. I feel you, Kael. The wind stirred the trees, and I imagined, just for a second, that it carried my voice to him. Tuesday morning, he was back. Kael walked into history like nothing had happened. No shadows under his eyes, no hint of absence in his expression, but his energy was different. Still controlled, still unreadable, but quieter, not withdrawn. I looked up when he passed my row. He didn't glance at me, but his hand brushed the edge of my desk. Light. Intentional. No one else would have noticed. But I felt it like heat on glass. In that single moment, something shifted. Not in him. In me. For the first time, I didn't ache to be seen. I ached to understand. Why was he still holding back? What was he protecting me from? On Wednesday, he was late. Not dramatically, just enough to make everyone look up when the door opened. Kael walked in, calm as ever. But his tie was loose, and his eyes were red around the edges, like sleep hadn't touched him in days. He sat behind me. I felt the bond settle again, like a hand resting lightly on my back. But today, it trembled. When the teacher asked a question, Kael didn't answer. And when she repeated it, louder this time, he blinked. Just once.
What?
His voice was rough, caught off guard. A few students glanced at each other. Kael never missed a beat. But now, something in him had slept, and I felt it echo through me. After class, I waited. I didn't even pretend to look busy. He walked past like he didn't see me, and then he paused. "You okay?" I asked. Just 2 words. But they landed harder than I meant them to. He turned. Slowly. His eyes met mine, and in that second, that single second, he looked tired. Not physically, but tired of fighting something he wouldn't name. Then it was gone. The wall went back up.
Yeah.
He said.
Fine.
He dipped his head and turned from me, like someone trying not to break. The tension hadn't eased during the rest of the week. If anything, it had sunk deeper into the spaces between us, silent, thick, waiting. Kael was back in class, moving through the days as if nothing had shifted. But there was a subtle difference in how he carried himself. Less guarded. Still distant, yes, but not absent. And suddenly, that made it harder. In biology, the teacher had rearranged the seating chart on Friday. I found myself in the chair next to him, barely a breath between our arms. I tried to stay focused, but all I could feel was the warmth radiating from his side. At one point, I reached for my pen and my fingers skimmed the back of his hand. He didn't flinch. He just stilled, like he'd been waiting for it. I kept my eyes forward, heart pounding in my throat. Then, so softly I nearly thought I imagined it, he said.
This is getting harder.
I turned toward him, searched for his eyes, but Kael's eyes were fixed on the whiteboard, as if he'd never spoken at all. His expression gave nothing away, but his hand was trembling ever so slightly. I stood outside the pack house for almost 5 full minutes before I even knocked. I didn't have a plan. I wasn't even sure what I expected. I only knew that something between us had shifted, and I couldn't pretend not to feel it anymore. My knuckles rapped once against the heavy wood. The sound seemed too loud in the early evening air. No answer. I waited, hands still hovering, as if giving him time to sense me. Just as I turned to leave, the door creaked open. Kael stood there. His eyes scanned my face, like he was trying to solve a problem he didn't want to admit existed. I started, then stopped. I just needed to. He didn't answer, but he stepped aside. No questions, no demands, just a quiet invitation. I crossed the threshold slowly, and then, gently, without a word, he closed the door behind me. And it didn't feel like being shut in. It felt like being let in. Chapter 4. The countdown had started. Exams were done. Final projects submitted. Our last day was circled in red on every calendar in town, not because it was important, but because it was coming. And with it, the unspoken truth. We were about to stop being students. About to stop pretending this was still just school. Graduation robes were fitted. Shoes were polished. I should have been excited. Instead, everything felt hollow. Kael hadn't spoken to me since the night I stood in his doorway. He sat across the room in every class, always on time, always present, but quieter than ever. I dreamt of it again. That sensation of fire under my skin, like a howl building in my throat. Except this time, when I turned in the dream, I saw him, standing in a forest of burning trees, looking at me, but not moving, like he couldn't cross the flames, maybe because he hadn't that night. I remember the weight of the silence when I stepped into his house. He hadn't said anything. He didn't sit, just leaned against the far wall, like he was holding it up with his shoulders. I wanted to speak, to ask, to scream, but the moment held us both hostage. And after a few minutes, or maybe an hour, I couldn't tell, I left, without a single word spoken between us. No touch, no questions. Just the comfort of being in the same space for a moment. The soft click of the door behind me froze me in place. It felt like the door had closed again between us. Like even the house didn't want him to break free. The morning of graduation felt more like a wedding than an ending. Dresses and suits. Smiles that didn't reach eyes. Mother's smoothing hair, father's adjusting ties. And beneath it all, the quiet tension of what now? I stood in the mirror longer than I should have. The girl looking back at me wasn't the one who'd walked into this town all those months ago. She stood straighter, looked tired but certain. My aunt hugged me longer than usual.
"You've made it,
She whispered,
but you're not done."
and I wasn't sure what she meant, but I felt it too. The ceremony blurred. Speeches, names, clapping. Then, Kael. His name echoed through the hall, and I watched him cross the stage. He looked across the crowd and stopped just short of me. There wasn't pride in his eyes, it was sorrow. After the ceremony, there were photos and flowers. My aunt and uncle greeted the Alpha and Luna, Kael's parents. Everyone smiled. Everyone lied with their faces. And still, the air between Kael and I was pulsing. When I finally caught him alone, near the edge of the field, I stepped close. "Are you okay?" I asked. His voice was soft, distant.
You don't want to ask me that today.
"Why not?" He looked toward the pack house.
Because tonight, the walls might not hold.
Then he turned and walked back into the blur of celebration, leaving me standing there with nothing but questions and a growing suspicion that the house had been part of the reason why. The celebration faded fast. Streamers were already sagging by the time we left the hall. Music still played, but softer now, like even it knew the night was over. I walked home with shoes in my hand and my heart full of static. Everything had changed, and somehow nothing had. My aunt was still up, tea in hand, soft-eyed. She said she was proud. I believed her. But when I lay down that night, I couldn't sleep, because all I could think about was the way Kael had looked at the pack house. Like it wasn't just a building, but as if it was watching him too. The next morning, I didn't mean to walk that way, but my feet took me there, to the edge of the woods near the pack house. I didn't get closer. I just watched. The windows were still, but I felt that chill, that hum. Like the house remembered blood. Then I saw someone on the front steps. An old man, tall, with shoulders drawn back like he'd been forged, not born. He didn't move. Just stood there as if the house belonged to him, or feared him. I thought it might be Kael's grandfather. I didn't know it. But I felt it. His eyes didn't find me. Still, I felt something shift. A pulse, a flicker in the air. I glanced at the window just above him, and there, behind the curtain, something else moved. Someone watching him, and somehow also watching me. It lasted only a second. But when I blinked and the old man was gone, and the window was still again. I didn't know who I'd seen, but I knew what I felt. I wasn't meant to be here, so I backed away slowly. I didn't need to know who he was. All I knew was that Kael was just a guest. A prisoner in his own home. I kept thinking about the window. The flicker of a shadow. The old man on the steps. I knew what I'd seen, even if no one else would believe me. The graduation bus faded fast. No more announcements in the streets, no more dresses hanging in shop windows. Just the quiet after everyone stopped pretending they weren't scared. I found myself near the pack house again. Not close, just close enough. Like I was waiting for something to appear at the windows, or disappear from them. That morning, I saw her. The Luna. She stepped out onto the porch like she didn't expect to see me, but didn't flinch either.
You're Lila?
She said. Not a question. I nodded. Her smile didn't warm anything.
Kael's not well.
I felt that sentence like a bruise.
He hides it, but not from me.
She paused, looked back at the house, then added,
There are expectations on him.
She didn't explain, and I didn't ask. Then she turned, opened the door, and disappeared inside, leaving me with the silence, and the sense that Kael wasn't the only one trapped behind that door. That night, I dreamt again. The forest was louder. The wind pushed through the trees like warnings. Kael stood at the edge of the woods. His fists were clenched, blood on his hands. I tried to run to him, but the house rose behind him like a mountain. Watching, waiting, and in one of the windows, a figure stood. Tall, still. I didn't need to see the face. I woke with a gasp, the echo of claws still scraping across stone in my head. Kael wasn't just being watched. He was being pressured, and maybe hunted, by a legacy that had teeth. The moon spilled silver across the treetops. Not full, but wide and bright, caught between clouds that drifted like forgotten thoughts. I didn't want to shift, but my wolf was desperate to get out. Something in my chest uncoiled, a silent ache pulling me out of my skin. My wolf broke free, in fur and pulse, 4 legs carrying me through the dark with a kind of ease I didn't know I needed. My wolf breathed in the night. The scent of damp moss, of pine bark, of hidden things. She moved like she remembered this place, like every root and shadow was familiar. I let her lead because she didn't ask for permission. Leaves whispered beneath our paws as we crossed deeper into the woods. A stream murmured somewhere nearby, and a lone owl called once, then fell silent. I heard something behind me, not a snap or growl. Just his smell. My wolf turned slowly. Her ears lifted, her body low, but not afraid. A black wolf, broad shoulders and golden eyes. Still as stone, but every inch of him alive, watching. Kael. He didn't come closer right away. He tilted his head, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. One step, then another. Each careful, and each step grounded. Like asking permission in silence. My wolf waited, and when he stopped just a few paces away, she took a step forward. We met in the open. Nose to nose. 2 heartbeats, pulsing in the same rhythm. He didn't move, just closed his eyes, and for a moment, only a moment, he let go. It was in the air around us. Not just recognition. Relief. Our wolves found each other. They had to take over, even if it was for a short while. There was a shift in the wind, a warning. Smoke, not fire, but something older, sharper. Kael's wolf stiffened. His ears flicked. With one last glance, he turned and vanished between the trees. But something had shifted between us. We weren't disconnected anymore. I didn't see him for 2 days. That quiet thread between us had tightened, humming in the background of every hour. When I stepped into the woods that afternoon, I wasn't surprised to find him already there. By the stream, where the water moved slow and silver over moss-covered stones. Kael sat on a flat rock, elbows on his knees, eyes on the current. He didn't look up when I approached. I sat just close enough to him that we were breathing the same air. The silence stretched. Not uncomfortable, just at peace. "It's quieter here," I said finally. His head dipped slightly.
That's why I come here.
I looked at him, at the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched just slightly, then released. Like he was having a whole conversation inside himself. "Kael." He looked at me like he was memorizing my face, as if he missed me, even though I was right there.
I don't know how to explain it.
He said. His voice was low, tired. "Try." He didn't speak for a long time. The water was all you hear. Then he whispered,
The night we shifted, my wolf needed yours. I needed you. As it was wished by the moon goddess.
I nodded. "Me and my wolf too." His jaw tightened.
But I can't have what I want. Not with him watching, and he can't know about you, Lila.
I didn't ask who, because I already knew. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. "Kael, I saw him," I said. "I think I saw your grandfather." He flinched. Not visibly, but deep in his body, like something pulled tight had just snapped inside him. His breath came sharp, then slow.
I never want you near him or the house, Lila. Not because I don't want you. Because of him.
The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was filled with everything we hadn't said yet. He stood slowly, brushing his hands against his jeans like they want to get rid of something.
I'm not ready, but
He said. Then, softer, barely audible.
I wish I could tell you everything. But soon, I promise.
I stood too, heart beating in my throat. You don't have to. Yet. Just don't shut me out. He gave the smallest nod, his eyes filled with promises. Kael turned, walking back through the trees. Not walking away this time. Just till we see each other again kind of way. Sleep had been uneasy for days. Shallow, restless, like my mind didn't trust what it might find behind closed eyes. But that night I gave in. And as I feared, the dream returned. I was in the forest again. The trees leaned in, tall and skeletal, whispering in a language made of wind and warning. The path beneath my bare feet was soft with damp earth, and every step felt like I was walking across something ancient. Something that remembered pain. In the clearing ahead, the house stood like a monument to silence. No lights, no sound, just stillness. But not the comforting kind. It was the kind that held its breath before something breaks. Kael stood just beyond the porch, his back to me. He didn't move, but his body was coiled with tension, like he could hear something I couldn't. Behind him, the front door stood open. Then I saw a figure. Not fully formed, more shadow than man, but solid in presence. It stood in the doorway like it belonged there, as if the house wasn't just shelter, but its skin, and it was watching me. No eyes, just that unbearable pressure of being seen. I tried to speak, but no sound escaped my lips. Kael lifted his hand like he was keeping me back. I heard his voice, hoarse and raw. Run. I couldn't move. Lila, run. The shadow stepped forward, the air around it bending, as if even the dream world didn't want it to be real. But I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. My heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I was sitting up in bed, my blanket twisted, my skin cold with sweat. But something felt wrong. My room was quiet, but there was a weight in the air. A presence. As if the dream hadn't ended, only followed me back. I knew without question. This wasn't just a nightmare. It was a warning. I didn't think. I didn't even dress properly. I just ran. The forest blurred around me as I moved, dodging branches, barely feeling the ground beneath my feet. Every breath came faster, every step more desperate. Something was wrong. And I knew, deep, bone deep, that I had to get to Kael. But he found me first. He came crashing through the trees from the opposite direction, wild-eyed and breathless. His boots skidded to a stop in front of me, sending dust curling into the air. His hand went straight to his hair, dragging through it with frustration before his eyes locked on mine.
I told you to run, Lila.
He shouted. His voice cracked with more than just anger. It was fear, panic, something breaking open.
Why didn't you listen?
I stepped toward him, heart pounding, words stuck behind the storm in my throat. But just like in the dream, he lifted his hand and held it out between us. Not to touch me, to stop me. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, breath ragged, eyes fixed on mine. And then I felt it, a pressure rising behind him. Something thick and dark moving closer, unseen but undeniable. A chill crept across my skin, and I knew this wasn't the dream anymore. It was real. It was here. My vision blurred. A tear slipped down my cheek. But it wasn't just wet. When I touched my face, my fingertips came away red. It was blood. His jaw clenched. His voice dropped to a growl, but not from anger. From something older, something primal.
Run.
He said. Not like before. He was begging me to run.
I'll find you.
That was the last thing I heard before the shift took me. My body dissolved into instinct. My thoughts burned away. And I ran, the way only a wolf can run when there's no safety left. I didn't know where I was going, only that the air behind me carried the weight of everything I feared. Chapter 5. I didn't stop running until my wolf and I had no more to give. My wolf's paws dragged and her head hung, her legs burned. But something in her, not fear, not thought, kept pushing forward. My wolf knew where to go, even if I didn't. She couldn't put the destination into words. She moved with muscle memory. And when she finally slowed, it was because we stood on the edge of an old clearing. The trees opened wide and quiet around it, like the forest itself held its breath. A low hut stood in the center, stone and thatch, smoke curling faintly from a crooked chimney. It didn't look threatening, but it didn't feel safe either. We didn't shift back, just lay down beyond the clearing, with the unknown knowledge that we had arrived. The moment the cloth touched my naked body, I opened my eyes. I realized that I had shifted back. My eyes closed again, and I fell back into the abyss of darkness. There were no dreams, just a quiet, deep sleep. I finally awoke when the door creaked open. An old woman, an elder, stepped into the bedroom. Not Pack, not stranger either. Her eyes were silver, not the pretty kind, but the kind that sees through you.
You're late?
She said, like we'd spoken before. I didn't know I was supposed to come, I answered. She looked me over. Not kindly, not cruelly.
Celeste, your wolf did.
She turned around and walked out of the room. It felt like an invitation to follow her. The room was warm but bare. Her scent was wild, pine needles and rust and shadow. There were no photos, no pack crest, no comfort. Just symbols scratched into the walls, bones tied with string, and a silence that buzzed louder than noise. She sat by the fire. "Why am I here?" I asked.
You're not here.
She pointed to her head.
Celeste is.
My wolf stirred. The elder didn't flinch.
She's older than you know, and she remembers what the rest of you have forgotten.
I didn't move, I couldn't. The woman stared into the flames.
She came to ask directions. She's ready now.
For what?
To listen and to remember.
My knees gave in. I sat hard on the ground. There was a thrum behind my ribs, a pressure in my spine. Voices, soft, distant, like wind through hollow trees. Names I didn't know I knew. The elder didn't blink.
You're not just here to hide. You were born to put the dead to rest.
I knew she was gone. I felt the pull of our bond weakening by the second. She ran, like I told her to, but I didn't feel the calm I expected. That distance would mean safety. Because distance won't keep her safe. The unanswered bond will bring its own danger. I stepped out of the woods with lead in my boots. Not because I was tired, because I didn't want to go back. Not to the pack house. Not to him. The house loomed in the clearing like it always did. Tall, shadowed, and too still. The Alpha's house. Passed from father to son. But never truly given. I paused at the porch. My hand hovered over the railing. Even before I stepped inside, I knew he's watching. My grandfather wasn't just a story whispered to scare children. He was a storm. Hard, sharp, and an unrelenting alpha. When he died, he didn't leave. He made a deal with a witch, old magic, bitter and binding, that tied his spirit to the pack house itself. As long as his alpha bloodline lived there, he could remain. He could watch, influence, and manipulate. He couldn't break my father. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't mold him into the cruel heir he wanted. My father stood up against him, with mercy, with fairness, with empathy, and with a strong Luna, my mother. But me? I was his second chance. I stepped inside. The air clung to my skin like damp fog. The temperature dropped. The silence was listening. The portraits on the wall watched me like they always did. His eyes, staring out from aged canvas, judged every move. I walked past the dining room and into the old study. There he stood, full figure, tall, rigid, dressed in the coat he was buried in. No breath, and no heartbeat, just the shape of who he used to be. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The moment I met his eyes, I felt the weight in the air. That pressure behind my forehead. Behind my spine.
You let her run.
I didn't answer.
She makes you weak.
My fists clenched at my sides. My jaw locked.
She is not your mate. She is a distraction, a chain. And if you hold on to her, Kael, you'll drag the entire pack into ruin.
I closed my eyes, just for a second. I had heard these words before. In dreams, in thoughts, in doubts I tried to silence. He was always there, feeding them, tapping every wound I never let heal. She makes me stronger, I whispered, not sure if I meant to say it aloud. His figure didn't move, but the air in room tightened.
You think this is strength?
He hissed.
Yeah, you think bond makes you a good alpha?
He stepped forward, not like a ghost, like someone who had never stopped controlling this house.
You'll take the mate I chose for you, or you'll lose everything and everyone.
I didn't flinch, but inside, something fractured. Because I knew what he was capable of. Even now. And I knew exactly who he would go after first. If I disobeyed.
When I woke, I didn't know how many days had passed. The light through the window didn't help. It was soft, silver, neither morning nor evening. Time didn't move the same in this place, and maybe I hadn't either. The elder hadn't spoken since that first day. Not in the way I expected. She moved through the cottage like silence was a language. Boiling herbs, marking the walls with ash. Every motion was deliberate, not because she was slow, but because she didn't waste energy on things that didn't matter. I tried asking once, "What am I supposed to do?" She didn't answer, just threw more pine needles on the fire and eventually said,
Still too loud.
So I learned to sit and listen, not to her unspoken words, but to Celeste, to the wind through the thatch, the pulse of the floor under my bare feet. And at night, I dreamt, not of Kael or of my old memories, but of things that weren't mine. Names I didn't recognize, graves I hadn't seen, eyes staring through mine, whispering truths I wasn't ready to hear. And one phrase, always the same: "You were born to put the dead to rest." I didn't understand what it meant. I still don't. But I stopped questioning it because I knew Celeste understood, even if I didn't. When I woke, the elder was gone. No scent, no shadow. Just a folded blanket and the faintest trace of lavender in the air. Celeste didn't wait. She woke the anxious feeling in me, and I knew we were going back. I didn't shift. I walked barefoot through the forest, letting the leaves bite, the branches scratch. Pain kept me grounded when I am overwhelmed with voices and feelings. When I turned around, the cottage was gone. There was just an open clearing between the trees. As the trees of the forest parted for me to leave, something shifted in my chest. Recognition and purpose. I couldn't explain it, but I felt it through the bond, in the way the earth vibrated around his name. Kael was different. Just distant, darker, evil, and in emotional turmoil. Like the space around him had been sealed shut, and he has no escape. I knew why. It's the house. The presence inside it. He had become Alpha, but not the kind of Alpha he wanted to be. Not the boy who looked at me like I was the only thread holding him to his true self. Not the wolf who stepped gently forward in the forest and touched his nose to mine like he finally exhaled. No, the Alpha that stood now wore a mask built from evil and cruel legacy. And I wasn't going to let him disappear behind it. Chapter 6. The moment I crossed back into Stormridge pack territory, something changed. The trees became silent, and the forest whispered. But something beneath it all, beneath the wind and moss and sky, there was pain. It wasn't danger I felt. It was confusion. The kind that lives under your skin, buried so deep you forget it's there until it starts to hum. Celeste moved slower now, more aware. Not out of fear, but respect. Every step forward was a question asked of the land, and the land answered in silence. The house came into view between the trees. My breath caught, not because it looked different, but because I see it differently. And the house seemed to recognize that. It didn't feel like a home or a ruin. It felt like a boundary, a place where choices lived and lingered. I stopped at the edge of the clearing, feet sinking slightly into the moss. The sky had thinned, not dark, but gray and brittle. The air buzzed against my skin, not from heat or cold, but from something unseen pushing outward from within the house. A presence, anger, and cries. My eyes drifted up to the windows. He stood there, still framed by cracked glass and the faded curtains of a room I'd never noticed. Kael's grandfather. He didn't glare. He didn't sneer. He looked at me like a riddle finally answered. And then he smiled. It wasn't warm or mocking. It challenged. Celeste growled and stiffened beneath my skin. Then I felt Celeste's knowledge flooded through my blood. The recognition of something out of balance. Something bound to this place. Of something that knew my presence here meant its time was running out. The whispers from the forest stilled. A creak rolled through the house, long and low, like floorboards bearing weight that shouldn't exist anymore. My heart didn't race. It settled, because I knew he knows. He wasn't safe in the house anymore. He was not protected by the house anymore, and it had flinched the moment I stepped close. Lila felt Kael before she even saw or smelled him. He was standing at the edge of the clearing next to the training grounds. The pack members had stopped their training, and now all turned, first to him, then to her. As I walked closer, he gave a step back. I wasn't the same girl who had left just after graduation. I knew who I was, and I knew what I carried. I am Lila of the Shaman pack, and he is my fated mate. And no one will keep us apart anymore. I stopped a few steps in front of him. He closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and straightened to his full height. When he opened them again, the gold around his irises flickered.
What are you doing here?
I just looked at him and gave a soft smile. I heard you're the Alpha now, but not the Alpha you wanted to be. He gave a smirk, but his eyes were sad. Then he turned to the training wolves and dismissed them. They scattered quietly, but many of them kept glancing back over their shoulders.
You're not welcome here, Lila. I've chosen a mate. The ceremony will be held on the next full moon.
I didn't blink. My smile grew. Then reject me, exile me from Stormridge. A low growl escaped his lips. I saw him fight to keep his wolf in place, but he didn't answer. He turned away, and this time, I followed. The house loomed ahead, darker now in the half-light. It didn't look like a home. It looked like a prison. He walked up the steps without pause, like a man trying to escape. I hesitated. The first foot on that porch felt like a ripple through my chest. Celeste stirred instantly. The wood beneath me creaked, not from my weight, but from recognition. Kael reached the door, his hand on the handle, then stopped.
You shouldn't come in here. Just leave me alone.
His voice was soft, not a warning, pleading. I stepped up behind him. He looked over his shoulder. His eyes weren't gold now. They were gray with exhaustion.
I tried to protect you by pushing you away. But this house. My grandfather.
His words tangled like thorns, tearing through him. The house inhaled the moment the door opened, the air thick and still, as if it had been holding that breath for years. I stepped inside after him, and everything changed. The walls leaned toward me, like they recognized something older in me than they'd expected. I felt the house tense, like muscle memory reacting not to fight, but to find, to ban the unwanted, to release the trap. Kael turned to speak, but before he could say anything, the temperature dropped. A cold so sharp it scraped against my bones. From the hallway, shadows pulled themselves out of nothing. The house's memory, fear, desperation, and hope. Kael stepped in front of me instinctively, but I didn't retreat. Celeste didn't need to lead. I already knew what needed to be done. My voice didn't sound like mine when I spoke. He doesn't own the house. He doesn't own you, and it will never own me. The walls groaned. A portrait down the hallway fell on its own. Kael stared at me, not afraid, surprised, maybe even relieved.
You've been marked by something.
He whispered. No, I said. I was born to unmark, to put the restless to peace. And the silence that followed wasn't surrender. It was the house listening. Kael took my arm. His grip was firm, but gentle, not to restrain me, but to guide. Without a word, he led me out of the house. When we reached the threshold, he stopped. Outside, the entire Stormridge pack stood gathered, lined up, watching, waiting. Their eyes shifted between me and their alpha. Kael's mother, the Luna, stepped forward. She walked slowly, her expression soft with exhaustion, and a quiet smile resting on her lips.
Lila,
She said. Her voice was calm, almost grateful.
welcome back.
Thank you for seeing Stormridge as worth the risk to come to our aid. I'm tired. I can't keep holding the peace alone.
Then she lowered her head, a quiet act of submission. Kael looked from her to me, stunned. Then his father stepped forward, silent, and bowed his head too. One by one, the rest of the pack followed, some kneeling, others lowering their heads. Not commanded, but in silent recognition. I felt Kael's gaze on me, full of questions. But I didn't answer them with words. I stepped away from him, away from the Luna and the Alpha, and walked into the open space beside the gathered pack. I didn't look at them. I looked past them, into the field, and I saw them. Wolves. Dozens of them. Some clear, others only shadows. Eyes empty. Bodies flickering between fur and smoke. They just waited. The ones who had died under the hands of former Stormridge Alphas, silenced, erased. Bound to the place their lives were taken, Kael stood behind me, searching the open field. He didn't see them. I spoke, not to the pack behind me, but to the dead who still stood expecting, waiting. I vow to you, each and every one, I will guide you to peace. Those whose deaths were taken, not forgotten, will be seen, and they will be judged. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried like mist across the field, soft but unstoppable. Behind me, the house groaned. A sound like old wood remembering its burden. A snarl ripped through the air. Not human, not animal. Something twisted inhuman. The house roared. Kael turned sharply. His instincts took over. His eyes lit with gold. His canines bared. But he wasn't the only one. The Stormridge pack moved in unison, half-shifted, eyes glowing, bodies tense. Not afraid anymore, ready to face the Fred coming from the house. They stand with me who had come back, for all of them.
I saw Lila walking past me. I felt that same pull in my chest I'd felt the night I told her to run. This time I didn't want her to. I took a step forward. I needed to stop her. But before I could move again, a hand touched my arm. My mother. Her fingers were light, but the meaning behind them landed like stone. She just looked at me. When my eyes met hers, I saw it. She trusts her, maybe more than she trusts me right now. I froze. Lila reached the porch and paused. The house groaned beneath her step, like it was waiting for her. She looked back once, not with fear. She smiled at me, soft, steady, and impossibly calm. Her eyes tell me to trust her. Then she went inside. Just like that. No hesitation, no plea for help. Gone. My breath caught in my throat. My hands curled into fists. It felt wrong to let her go in alone. Again. First, I'd sent her away to protect her. Then, I'd chose someone else to stand where she should have been. And now, I couldn't even follow her. I turned to my mother. Why can't I go with her? She didn't answer, just walked away toward the gathering circle. I followed. So did the pack. The fire was low when we entered. No voices, no tension, just silence. She gestured for me to sit. I did. The Alpha's chair had never felt heavier, and then she sat in the Luna's chair next to me, folded her hands in her lap. Her voice was soft when she spoke. She tells me about Lila, about the Shaman pack, about wolves who weren't made to fight for territory, but to free the bound, to carry the weight of those who died without peace. The Shaman pack's duty to set them free. Some will see it as a curse, but for them it's their purpose. As she spoke, my pulse slowed, not from fear, from admiration, relief, and a faint feeling of hope for freedom to be able to claim her.
When the door closed behind me, the air changed, not colder, heavier, like it had been holding its breath and now prepared to fight. I didn't flinch. Celeste moved beneath my skin, calm and waiting. She was still. She didn't pace or growl. She just watched. I walked deeper into the house. The walls leaned in, not physically, but in presence. That's when I saw him, standing in the shadows of the long hallway, his coat dark and still, his eyes sharper than the portraits ever captured. Kael's grandfather.
You shouldn't be here,
He said. His voice was like old stone, cracked but full of weight.
You've interfered enough. You think your bond with Kael gives you the right to unravel our legacy?
He stepped forward.
This house,
He hissed.
this pack, it survives because of what me and my forefathers ensured. Not in kindness, in order, in power. And that power demands cruelty and no emotion.
My wolf stirred.
Stormridge is built on blood. Every second or third alpha, a reminder of strength. We made sure of that. We are bound to this place. Through fang and fire and witchcraft, so no son of mine would grow soft.
He sneered.
And no lone wolf from a dead pack is going to unmake what we sacrificed our souls for to preserve.
That's when Celeste moved. She pushed forward, not angry, certain. I felt the shift in my spine before I allowed it. Fur, breath, bone. My body bowed and she rose. We faced a beast of shadow. His wolf is tall and old, but not weak. He lunged first. Celeste didn't meet him with fury. She met him with clarity and purpose. They collided midair, claws scraping wood, teeth snapping. He was fast, older with experience, trained in violence. Celeste was even older, and he knew he met his match. She met him with a strength that had been forged in silence and millenniums. Claws tore, one landed. Pain ripped across our side, not deep, but sharp. Blood hit the floor. He went again, low this time, aiming for the hind leg. But Celeste twisted, gritted through the sting, and bit down. Her jaws locked into the space beneath his ribs, the center of old power, bound to the soul. A cry cracked from him, not rage, surprise. With a sound like bones snapping in reverse, his form scattered. It was quiet after the cry, and like dust caught in wind. Like smoke finally unbound. He was gone. The house exhaled. The walls eased. The cold slipped away. And for the first time since I entered, the air felt clean. Celeste limped back a step. Not broken, but bleeding. She turned her head once, and I felt her pride ripple through me. As I shifted back, I felt the darkness taking hold of me. The world outside the house felt too bright and too quiet. I didn't remember stepping out. I only remembered the moment Celeste pulled back into me, and the ache that followed. My legs gave way on the porch. I sank to my knees, palms flat against the wood, breath uneven. It didn't feel like weakness. It felt like the price I have to pay. I didn't even hear her approach.
"Don't move,"
said a voice beside me, a presence that was gentle and firm. Joey, the Luna Kael had chosen when I couldn't stay, the Omega with the soft voice and healer's hands. She knelt beside me, her touch already assessing the damage.
"You'll be okay,"
she said, helping me up.
"No cracked bones, just torn skin and soul fatigue."
I smiled barely, but she saw it.
"Come on,"
she added.
"Let's get you upstairs."
I didn't argue. She helped me to the Alpha's room, the one that still held Kael's scent like a promise. When we reached the bed, I turned to her. There was a question in my eyes I couldn't bring myself to ask. She answered anyway.
"I have a fated mate, Luna,"
she said softly. Luna.
"He's out there waiting for me to call him back.
Then, with a small smile,
And now that you're back, and the curse are broken, Alpha will never go through with the forced mating bond."
I didn't know what to say, but she shook her head with a smile. She applied the dressing and then turned to leave. At the door, she paused.
"Rest while you can,"
she added.
"You've got work waiting."
She looked at me, not like a rival, like someone who understood.
"There are wolves who've been waiting years to be seen, and you're the only one who can help them move on."
The door closed behind her. A few minutes later, Kyle's presence always moved ahead of him. When he entered, he didn't speak right away. He just stood there, taking me in, the bandage, the bruises, the calmness in the room. Then he stepped forward.
I should have been there.
He said. He sat beside me on the bed, close but not touching, still cautious.
I didn't know how to fight what he was.
He admitted.
Didn't know how to stop it.
How would you? I didn't even know, I said. Our eyes met. There were no promises, no declarations, only silence and presence, and the feeling that, for once, neither of us needed to run. Epilogue. Months later, the ceremony wasn't what I expected. There were no grand speeches, no crowns, no full moon spotlight, just torches steady in the dusk, just a circle of wolves, not kneeling, not roaring. Kael stood at the center. His shoulders were broader now, his eyes steadier and full of emotion. The boy I met at school had become the Alpha I once feared he'd never be. He never looked at the crowd. He only looked at me. I stepped forward. My steps were slow, deliberate. I could feel Celeste beneath my skin, calm, ready. He reached out his hand. Mine rested in his with a complete surrender and peace. There were no fireworks or howls, just complete submission from us and the pack. That night, when the pack danced and celebrated, I stood at the edge of the field. The shadows were quieter now, and for the ones that still remained, I whispered into the night, "I'll come when you call, all of you, always, I promise." Thank you for listening with us here at Bookworm. Please remember to like and subscribe so we can let you know when the next exciting story is available. Hope to see you again soon.